Live. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Tuesday, October 26th, 2021. I'm sure that, I keep reminding myself that every once in a while I have trouble with the mute button, unmuting. I don't know whether it's really symptomatic of anything happening with this thing or what, but okay. Well, at any rate, I got to keep an eye on this thing. And with supply chains being what they are, I suppose I should start looking at having a replacement on hand. Probably a good idea. Not how I plan to start the show, but okay. Time to get ready. Here's Bill just popped up right here on the screen just in time as I was glancing over what was going on Twitter. The Kagro in the Morning radio show is live now. Thank God I've had a tweet here to tell me this. Otherwise, you might never have known. Not from what we've been broadcasting so far anyway. Please know that if your host, Kagro X, that's me, gets too agitated, this could happen. A staffer is on call. There is no staff, but a staffer is on call to play soothing Andrew Lloyd Webber tunes to pull him back from the brink. Message, we care. Good old George H.W. Anyway, yeah. Tell me the Gorilla Channel story wasn't real again. I don't know. This one's of course much more believable and can be passed off in polite society as perhaps something that's not, weird or outrageous in any way about Donald Trump, but sounded kind of weird. I did hear, where was this story? I mean, I think I retweeted in the last couple hours, which is probably why it's on Bill's mind, but whose story was it? I'll have to run through it. I only resurrected it this morning so I could make my Gorilla Channel joke, which I love, and I really think needs to be reevaluated in light of what we learned about him. But here we are. Was it MSNBC? Yeah. Had a piece that I guess they were promoting and saying, I guess somewhere inside, Trump's staffers would play Andrew Lloyd Webber tunes to soothe him, which, as I said, isn't terribly outrageous. Not quite as dumb sounding as his aides putting together a fake cable news channel about gorillas. Gorilla News, I guess, to, entertain him or whatever. Of course, that was a less sensational story than, boy, I hate living here in the White House because there's no porn channels. I mean, there was that instance, which may or may not have been true. All I'm saying is many people were saying it at the time. And now, then there was the Gorilla Channel thing, which then they assured us, no, we haven't edited together footage of gorillas to entertain him. That would be crazy. On the other hand, non-crazy, we play Andrew Lloyd Webber tunes to soothe him. And I guess that's supposed to be a more acceptable thing. But of course, you're not supposed to have to soothe an angry president with music, as you might the savage beast, let's say. And, I don't know. I guess as tune selection goes, there's probably plenty of Andrew Lloyd Webber fans out there that find this, as they say, relatable. But I don't think there's much to the story. Do you need it read? Hayes Brown, MSNBC opinion columnist. This has to be an opinion that he liked Andrew Lloyd Webber? I don't think so. I think maybe they're reviewing one of the crazy-ass books. Yes, it's the Stephanie Grisham book. Okay, so probably one of the least shocking or least surprising revelations, if that's what it is, from the tell-all books. They're now telling all of us what music it was that calmed down. Are you interested in which tunes in particular? It says here in the excerpt, at one point, Grisham writes, I'm sorry. So this is, just to give you even more background on the provenance of this quote, it is MSNBC telling us how the New York Times frames the revelation that then President Donald Trump's staff had a protocol in place to help temper his frequent rages. Now quoting Stephanie Grisham's book by, one-offing here. At one point, she writes, Mr. Trump's handlers designated an unnamed White House official an official known as the Music Man, that's not the official title of it, I'm sure, to play him his favorite show tunes, including Memory from Cats. Well, that's nice. That played a big role in Big as well, when Josh wished his way to adulthood. And golly, we can all relate, can't we? I don't know. But Memory apparently would pull him from the brink of rage. The aide, it is revealed later, is Ms. Grisham's ex-boyfriend. Which, I mean, that would give her insight into the situation, certainly. I guess I'm a little bit curious about whether they got together in the White House. Like, wow, you're the music guy? That's so exciting. I'd like to date you. Or whether it was, my boyfriend needs a job. He could play music to Mr. Trump when he flies into a rage. I'm curious about the order of that. But the aide, it is revealed later, is Ms. Grisham's ex-boyfriend, then also of some entertainment value here. She does not identify him, which is also a bit of a letdown if you're the boyfriend. But it is Max Miller. So someone else identifies him, the New York Times does. A former White House official now running for Congress with Mr. Trump's support. He would put on the music so beautifully. And he would press the button, big, beautiful play button that we had on the machine that we used to make the music. I'm sure he doesn't have any idea. Do you think Trump is like a cassette tape kind of guy still? I mean, reliving the 80s glory days things, or is he a CD guy, or did they have it as digital music in the White House? I wonder about that. And what does it say about Max Miller's, whoever he is, ability to stand for Congress? I'm curious where he's running. Where do you go? Where they say, you played the music, you pushed the play button for Donald Trump, huh? We'd love to have you in Congress. Let's see. Let's Google it here. Max Miller, Congress. The official Max Miller website. I've found it. I guess. Ohio is, where he's staking out his claim. That's what Wikipedia tells me. I'm going to go look over there. Yeah, there's a picture and everything. He looks totally, I don't see his hands here, but he's probably capable of pressing the play button and maybe even skipping tracks. Again, like I say, I haven't seen his hands, but adequate hand size, not a barrier to working in the Trump White House. We know that. Let's see. A ripe old 31 or 32 years of age here, born in 1989, so after most of this music was written. That's pretty interesting, too. He likes, really old music or something. And anyway, I'm running for Congress. So, well, does it make any sense to dive into his background? I guess not. Graduate of Shaker Heights High School, in case you wanted to know. And if you were there at the same time, he graduated in 2007. So, perfect for, Congress. Seems like it'll go really well. Well, depending on how they've redistricted out there, we may have plenty of Max Millers out there, and I'm sure he'll be joining the Marjorie Taylor Greene caucus. Lots of discussion on that front as well. But more revelations, more statements being put out. I saw Lauren Boebert put out her very brave 1776 style statement this morning. She's made a long walk away from where she started with tweeting that today is 1776, etc., etc. Today, Hugo Lowell will pull out this tweet and save it for later. Hugo Lowell, congressional reporter for The Guardian, U.S. version of The Guardian, says new House Republican Lauren Boebert says in carefully worded statement, I'm sure, I had no role in the planning or execution of any event that took place at the Capitol or anywhere in Washington, D.C. on January 6th. Of course, it is alleged that she was spotted giving tours of the Capitol building on January 5th. Also alleged that those tours were a sort of pre-riot reconnaissance that she was helping out with. She's named or she's singled out by name along with some half dozen other members of Congress as having been in on the planning sessions in the War Room and at the Willard. I don't know whether she was present at the Willard Hotel, but in planning sessions at the White House, all of which is, well, rather inexplicable all by itself. But she denies having had any role. Interesting choice of words, it's true. Not only that Boebert makes in their carefully worded statement, but as Molly Jong-Fast pointed out, probably just, generally unwise to have Lauren Boebert and carefully worded in the same sentence. But, of course, my eye went elsewhere when she said I had no role in the planning or execution of any event. I thought, execution, interesting thought, tell me more. But, I'm mostly alone there, along with millions of others. But, anyhow, just an interesting thing for her to be doing. And, like I said, long walk from today is 1776 to now, like, I didn't do it. It wasn't me. Look over there. I never heard of such a thing. Donald Trump, who's that? Very 1776 of you. Anyway, so that occupying a lot of Twitter's time this morning. Let's see. Other fun things that we should check in on. There's, this interesting and fun HuffPost piece about everyone's writing about everyone else here today. So this is, we're not going to read any articles. We're just going to read other people talking about having read these articles and what they think of them. It's a very meta show. Miami Herald pulls no punches with stinging Governor Ron DeSantis editorial. And I'm glad that HuffPost picked this up because I think Miami Herald eventually paywalls their stuff after a certain number of articles. And it's late in the month. I think I've hit that wall, if there even is a free allowance at Miami Herald. Another one of the papers that everyone should be paying to subscribe to and support. A controversial statement, to be sure. Anyway, what do we have here? Lee Moran's piece is subtitled here, "We thought things couldn't get much worse in DeSantis' handling of the pandemic, but we were wrong," the newspaper's editorial board wrote. Well, they were right this time. They were right to write that they thought things couldn't get much worse, but that they did. Okay. Is that straight? Florida Governor Ron DeSantis is plummeting into anti-vax crazyville. That's a quote from the Miami Herald's editorial board piece, declaring in a stinging column as much on Monday, a capital C for Crazyville, so a proper noun, place name. Very cool. "We thought things couldn't get much worse in DeSantis' handling of the pandemic, but we were wrong. Then we were wrong again." The newspaper's board wrote, "Just when you think he's done enough to undermine our chances of exiting a pandemic that has killed nearly 60,000 Floridians, he has a new trick up his sleeve." Of particular concern for the newspaper was DeSantis' new effort announced last week to undermine President Joe Biden's COVID-19 vaccine mandate. Recall that up to now he's been only flirting with anti-vaccine stances and has said, no, you should get the vaccine. But also, and if you don't, and you just feel like not getting it, but then you get sick, I'll give you free Regeneron on the state. We'll pay for it. It's a lot more expensive. It's a bad idea to approach things this way, and it doesn't help anybody with anything, but what the hell? Let's give it a try. Well, it's not true that it doesn't help anybody with anything, but it doesn't help fight the pandemic or keep the costs of fighting the pandemic down. You have to get the disease in order for it to be helpful to you. So, you start out behind the eight ball, as it were. Of particular concern for the newspaper was DeSantis' new efforts announced last week to undermine the vaccine mandate. DeSantis now wants to make companies, quote, liable for medical harm that results from mandatory vaccinations, even though millions of vaccines have safely been administered in the United States, the editorial board says. That's an interesting twist, too. Usually they're in the business of saying we're not going to allow anyone to hold businesses liable when something goes wrong or other than as planned. You can bring your guns with you into the supermarket, and is the supermarket liable to its customers when the gun goes off? No. Is it liable to its employees when somebody's gun accidentally goes off, reaching in their pocket for change to pay for the bananas or whatever it is that they're doing? No. and you're not allowed to, et cetera, et cetera. But now, yeah, so if you mandate that your employees get the vaccine and they suffer medical harm from the vaccine, I mean, anything's possible, they can now sue their employer, which, as a default position, well, I guess it is the default position in most places, but we legislate around it most often. What I find, it's not a terrible position to land on and stay on consistently. What's annoying about it is, of course, that DeSantis will exempt businesses from all sorts of other liability from which they shouldn't be exempt, and then, exempt them from something like this for entirely political reasons. Anyway, DeSantis has for months tried to walk the tightrope between pleasing anti-vaxxers and not undermining the vaccines his own administration has distributed, it added. If there was any doubt of which side he favors, Thursday's announcement put the nail in the coffin. Yikes, in the coffin. What imagery, eh? Well, okay. I think that's all there is, in fact, for this one. So Lee Moran got away with a very short piece on that one, getting the news delivered effectively. I'll say that. One other note from Florida of late. Apparently, he has... we probably made note of something in the past couple of weeks or so, that DeSantis has nominated a new attorney general, the other kind of non-general general, the Surgeon General of Florida, in the last, couple of weeks, I guess, but I think we took note of the fact that he's been a prominent anti-vaxxer. Is he just a flat-out anti-vaxxer? Or certainly anti-mandate, anti-mask mandate, anti-vaccine mandate, and he seems to have been selected specifically for that trait. How odd that no other medical opinion was of any interest whatsoever to Ron DeSantis in making this selection. Apparently, though, the guy, I guess he's really only Surgeon General designate, as they call them when we talk about people at the federal level still awaiting their confirmation by the legislature. I don't know how they handle it in Florida, but I understand he is still to be confirmed by the Florida State Senate. And I don't know whether their lower house has any role in confirmations. We learned on the show, reading about one state or another that has bicameral approval of these sorts of nominations. Caught me by surprise. Don't know if Florida is one of them. Anyway, his name is Joseph Ladapo, and, I know next to nothing about him. But I did see the other day the story from, CBS News, and then tweeted around by Aaron Blake here. Florida Surgeon General Joseph Ladapo was asked to leave after declining to wear a mask during a meeting with a state senator with a serious health condition. The GOP, let me start out with the article here, and then does CBS start from the beginning and then tell the latest story? Because there was an interesting twist to that story. Yes, Florida's top health official, and they just call him that even though he hasn't been confirmed, was asked to leave a meeting after refusing to wear a mask at the office of a state senator who told him she had a serious medical condition, officials have confirmed. This, again, according to the CBS News reporting of this story. And, I'll go on, shall I? Florida Senate leader, this is the reaction story, actually, so I'll fill in some background here. And I'm pretty sure if I scroll even further back, I'll find older tweets about it, and I'll find the original story. But apparently the issue you should keep in mind, besides the fact that this state senator with whom Ladapo is visiting says she has a serious medical condition, and it's that she was recently diagnosed with breast cancer and is about to enter treatment, I guess chemotherapy, radiation, etc. But yeah, that'll leave you immune compromised. And it's, that's dangerous. And also, it was her office, and asked him to put on a mask, and he just kind of sat there and refused. There's a little bit of background in the earlier stories about this stuff. So just as a matter of personal courtesy, it seems ridiculous. But again, remember, he hasn't been confirmed, and the confirmation is in the hands of the Florida State Senate. He is visiting with a Florida State Senator about this, and it just seems like, gosh, that's a bad idea in terms of the viability of your confirmation now. But I will point out that the Florida State Senate is majority Republican, and, well, she's a Democrat, and so therefore, they might actually cheer about this idea of refusing to wear a mask. And I am pretty sure that he thought that's what was going to happen. Yeah, here's, I think, the original story I saw of it from floridapolitics.com, where Christine Jordan Sexton wrote this up over the weekend, I guess, on the 24th. Surgeon General asked to leave Tina Polsky's office after refusing to wear a mask. Polsky will begin radiation therapy treatment for cancer next week. Florida's top public health official was asked to leave a state senator's office this week after refusing to don a mask in her office. Senator Tina Polsky, who was diagnosed with stage 1 breast cancer in August, asked State Surgeon General Joseph Ladapo and his 2 legislative aides to leave her office after Ladapo refused to comply with her request to put on a mask. I told him I had a serious medical condition, said Polsky, who will begin radiation therapy treatment for cancer next week. I guess that's now. Polsky said that Ladapo had requested to meet with her in Tallahassee this week. He was making the rounds, visiting several senators who will be asked in the upcoming session to confirm him. Right? Kind of dumb. Polsky said he offered to go outside when she asked him to put the mask on, but she declined. I don't want to go outside. I want you to sit in my office, and I want to talk to you. Polsky said there was a brief back and forth, and then she finally asked whether there was a reason he couldn't wear a mask. Right? Let's be reasonable, right? I'll ask, is there a reason you can't wear a mask? And he just smiles and doesn't answer. This is her quote. He's very smug, Polsky recalled. And I told him several times, I have this serious medical condition. And he said, that's okay. Like it basically has nothing to do with what we were talking about. Well, eventually Polsky said she asked Ladapo to leave her office, which he agreed to do, she said. But the senator said, before going, Ladapo remarked, quote, sometimes I try to reason with unreasonable people for fun. Yeah, that's not going to help a great deal, I don't think. There's a little bit more to the article. I mean, we might as well read a little bit more background. Wissam Khoury, I guess Weesam, Wissam Khoury, a Department of Health spokesperson, confirmed the meeting but said Ladapo didn't make the comment. So he denies that. Dr. Ladapo is committed to meeting with members of the legislature regardless of their party affiliation. Wow, that was big of him. To discuss policy, even when they do not agree on the subject at hand, Khoury said in an email. Meetings between highly regarded and intelligent elected and appointed officials happen all the time, and it is disappointing you don't hear about them more. Well, you're the spokesperson. Speak. But it is probably because the only time they get reported is when a genuine meeting turns into a media headline expected from a gossip column. This is a very poor response. Khoury added, misspelling Polsky's name, that she and Ladapo are saddened to hear about Senator Polsky's recent diagnosis and wish her well. Polsky said she's taking all precautions she can to protect herself from getting infected with COVID-19, or anything else, probably. A positive test means a delay in her treatment, and she doesn't want to take any risks, right? I really wanted to interview him. I had a lot of good questions, Polsky said, so that was unfortunate that I didn't do it, but I really felt uncomfortable. Or I felt really uncomfortable. Governor Ron DeSantis announced Ladapo as the state's new Surgeon General and head of the Florida Department of Health in mid-September, touting the associate professor from UCLA's David Geffen School of Medicine. Geffen, can you step in here and do something about this? As having a superb background and bringing a superb intellect, but not a very good demeanor, I guess. Like DeSantis, Ladapo is a vocal opponent of mask mandates, government shutdowns, and vaccine mandates. In a September 16th opinion article for the Wall Street Journal, Ladapo decried quote, a zealous pursuit of public mask wearing, unquote, which, he said, has had, at best, a modest effect on viral transmission. Well, that's all we're looking for here. She's going into radiation therapy next week. Couldn't you cut her a break? But apparently not. So, not good when you're out there looking for confirmation. And I don't think it played the way he was hoping, because in the CBS article, the next report is that Florida State Senate Leader Wilton Simpson, a Republican, sent a memo to senators on Saturday regarding the incident at the office of Democratic State Senator Tina Polsky, asking visitors at the building to be respectful with social interactions. Polsky, who represents parts of Broward and Palm Beach counties, hadn't made public her breast cancer diagnosis. Polsky told the Associated Press about the tense exchange with State Surgeon General Dr. Joseph Ladapo that was first reported by the news site Florida Politics. So we made it all the way back to the primary source on that one. That's good. She said Ladapo and two aides were offered masks and asked to wear them when they arrived for the Wednesday meeting. She didn't tell them she had breast cancer, but said she had a serious condition. And that really ought to be enough. And also it's her office. So that's not too cool. Anyway, good news that the Republican leader in the Senate is stepping in and saying this is actually unacceptable behavior, not the way you're supposed to approach things. It would be fantastic if it sunk his nomination. I mean, to me, it seems like a simple thing to sink the nomination. You want to be Surgeon General. Surgeons wear masks. You obviously aren't a surgeon. Can't be Surgeon General. Now, I know, of course, any sort of doctor. I guess anybody could be Surgeon General, but I think that's the sort of thing that would resonate with people who like to keep it simple. Surgeons wear masks, dude. You're out. Hi, it's me, David Waldman, the same guy who was just talking to you a second ago. Our Patreon subscription drive is still going strong, with over 175 monthly donors who help keep us on the air. If we've helped keep you going during the pandemic, why not return the favor and help us keep going so we can all be together for the next disaster? Patreon.com, Patreon.com, makes it easy to make secure, recurring monthly contributions to support our show. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. Maybe you'd like to thank us for keeping you sane during the Trump era. Maybe you're looking forward to in-depth explanations of what's going on in the Biden administration. Whatever it is that keeps you listening, we need your help to keep bringing it to you. And hey, if you happen to prefer using PayPal or even the Square Cash app, we're up and running with those options too. Thanks again, everyone, for all your support. We literally could not do this without you. Hi, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Edwards Radio. So I think that about sums it up, right? You want to be a Surgeon General. Surgeons wear masks. You refuse to wear one. You must not be a surgeon. Therefore, not qualified to be Surgeon General. Easy. Not a bad line to take, actually. And, when you're getting an assist from the state Senate leader, that can't be bad. There was another quote from Senator Simpson here from the memo. It says here in the memo sent by Simpson, the president of the Florida Senate, he said that while there's no mask mandate in the Senate, senators can request social distancing and masking within their offices. And that's the Republican position, right? Freedom inside your own office, right? Of course. It's the official position here. It shouldn't take a cancer diagnosis for people to respect each other's level of comfort with social interaction during a pandemic, he said. Sounds almost sensible, my God. What occurred in Senator Polsky's office was unprofessional and will not be tolerated in the Senate. Well, there's only one way to manifest the lack of toleration for it in the Senate, and that is not to confirm and perhaps even to vote to remove what's his name? I'll spell his name wrong. Ladapo from office. Throughout the article, and all this and other articles, they refer to him already being in office and already being the top health official in the state and taking official actions as well. There's, let's see, I just saw something here. Yes, in this CBS News article. A day into his job, Ladapo signed new rules allowing parents to decide whether their children should quarantine or stay in school after being exposed to people who tested positive for COVID-19. That's probably unwise. But here he is signing new rules before his confirmation. I guess that's just the way they do it there in Florida. Not surprising. They do a lot of things half-assed there in Florida. All right. Well, there's more on the news front I thought I might share with you. Although while I was reading, I think I thought, oh yes, here's what I'll do next. And then I forgot. What was that thing? All right. Well, we'll just make our way through the comments and through Pocket. Now I remember, because I think I did see it in my KITM hashtag column here. Let's see. Oh, well, Ricky asks, the question would be, is he actually a surgeon? I don't know, and I don't think so. It doesn't really matter. I'm simply playing the bumper sticker game. Doesn't have to be a surgeon in order to be a surgeon general, but they don't know that, do they? I mean, they clearly don't, as they very often, the ubiquitous they, very often these days, you find, particularly among Republicans, people addressing the Surgeon General and the Attorney General as General, like General Ladapo. Please tell us what your views are on vaccination. And, of course, the General here is descriptive of what sort of surgeon they are. Of course, in his case, not a surgeon at all, I guess. But, yeah, it's an adjective. Is that right? Is that I have the right part of speech? General. What kind of surgeon are you? Well, I'm the general. I'm a surgeon, the Surgeon General of the state. I am generally serving in the role as chief surgeon, not actually doing any surgery on anybody. Same with attorneys general. And that's why the plural is attorneys general and surgeons general, not attorney generals. But I guess everybody loves the general honorific. And it's annoying because it's become so common that it's believed to be acceptable now. I saw somewhere that people were saying, no, now that's now an accepted honorific for attorneys general and I guess surgeons general and postmasters general too, I suppose. And I don't know why they caved in on that. I will hold the line on that one. Anyway, Ricky asks, is he actually a surgeon? If so, does he wear a mask during surgery? Right. I mean, that's the point, obviously, of what we were getting at here, is that everybody knows that surgeons wear masks. And you would never, ever, ever, no matter how anti-mask you are, you would never allow surgery to be performed on you if the surgeon said, and by the way, I hate masks. I just can't wear them. I can't breathe when I do it. I mean, and that's never worked. I mean, with any of the anti-maskers throughout the pandemic, people say, when they say, oh, you're breathing in your own carbon dioxide and you'll pass out and your oxygen levels will drop. And you say, how do all those surgeons survive for hours on end in their masks without dropping dead? No one knows. It's a mystery. I don't believe they have any answer to that. I don't know. I've never really had that discussion with anybody because I just don't know people that dumb, I think. I must. I just never get into conversation with them, I suppose. Anyway, if you know, you can let me know. And that'll keep me up to date. Oh, look, I have to... it's time for a courtesy retweet of one of SFDB's gun fail collections. It's taken care of. I've outsourced it for the most part. Today's morning headline: Minnesota gunslinger shoots himself in the leg while holstering his gun following some target practice. It happens, and it does. We've seen it. Okay, so the next of the stories I had in mind, actually in my KITM hashtag as suggested by Kate Sherrill. And do I have the same story in... Yes, I do. The same Daily Beast story in Pocket. So there we are, thinking alike. Thanks, Kate. So that brings us to this shift in gears. I thought this was a nice update. Judge rules O'Keefe's schemes can't be portrayed to jury, can be portrayed to jury as political spying. We're talking here about James O'Keefe, which immediately made me think, how could there have been a dispute at all about what he's doing and whether or not it's political spying? I thought he would be very happy to admit that it was political spying, but I guess he must have gotten into some confrontation about it and decided that he sounded better if he denied that he was spying on people. Maybe because of all the time that Donald Trump and his inner circle and everybody who supports him has spent condemning what they believe was political spying against his campaign. And I guess that got a bad name, and then somebody must have realized, well, then if political spying is bad, and it is, then maybe James O'Keefe is bad. And I guess that upset him. Anyway, Will Sommer is the article's author here at the Daily Beast. Judge rules O'Keefe's schemes can be portrayed to the jury, that's the important part, as political spying. What's the jury for? Let's find out. Subheader here. Self-proclaimed conservative journalist James O'Keefe faces a lawsuit for his group's actions. That's why we're here. And he's already fighting at a disadvantage after this latest ruling, which, justifiable, this disadvantage. He's a political spy, and it's okay to say so. A federal judge has dealt conservative figure James O'Keefe a legal blow. My goodness. Ruling that his group's undercover operations against the Democratic consulting firm can fairly be described at an upcoming $1 million trial as, quote, political spying. Making matters worse for the right-wing star, the judge cited O'Keefe's own book as evidence against him. Oh my, it's a cell phone. In 2016, Allison Maass, maybe that's how she says it, M-A-A-S-S. It's like M and then ass with an extra A in it, an operative for O'Keefe's Project Veritas group, took an internship at Democratic firm Democracy Partners under a fake name. While staffers at the firm thought Maass was working to elect Democrats in the 2016 campaign, she was secretly recording them and relaying undercover video and notes on the group to Project Veritas. Project Veritas eventually released the video, prompting Democracy Partners founder Robert Kramer to, quote, step back from the Hillary Clinton campaign. Kramer and Democracy Partners sued Project Veritas, in 2017, it's been a while, over the sting. Now, with trial set for December, that tells you about how slowly things turn, right? This happened in 2016. They sued in 2017. It is now late 2021. The trial is set for the end of this year and will extend into December, or probably into January of 2022, although maybe they can get it done in a couple days. We'll see. At any rate, almost 2022 before they get anywhere with their, anywhere close to a conclusion in the suit. So let's see. With trial set for December, O'Keefe's lawyers wanted to preemptively prevent, well, that's how you prevent something, the plaintiff's lawyers from describing Project Veritas's work in court as political spying. In an October 14th court opinion, though, U.S. District Court Judge Paul L. Friedman ruled that it's reasonable to describe O'Keefe's group's actions that way. Political spying is a fair characterization of the undisputed facts of this case, Friedman, a Bill Clinton appointee, wrote. O'Keefe's lawyers had argued that Project Veritas operates as journalists, an argument that would likely make it easier at trial for Project Veritas to claim their activities were protected under the First Amendment. But much of the evidence that Project Veritas's operation could be called spying came from O'Keefe's own 2018 book, American Pravda. Describing the Democracy Partners' sting in his book, O'Keefe wrote that Maass worked under an assigned role. I guess that's instead of undercover. She had an, quote, assigned role, and compared her to a spy working in the Soviet Union, literally living out her character in America's capital city, much as Americans overseas did in Moscow during the Cold War. What a weird comparison. As if to make the comparison between Maass and notorious political spying operations clearer, O'Keefe wrote in his book that Maass devised a way to hide her recording device from metal detectors, and even compared Maass to the Watergate burglars. That's not actually a good comparison, but I guess he's O'Keefe. He doesn't know. The last time operatives got caught stealthily entering the DNC headquarters, which this isn't, those headquarters were in the Watergate complex, O'Keefe wrote. Remember that kerfuffle, which I guess is meant to be a dismissive thing. It only resulted in the resignation of a president, but whatever. What a kerfuffle. And also interesting, she's sneaking into Democracy Partners, a consulting firm, not the Democratic National Committee headquarters. But he wants to conflate that, I guess, in order to make things seem more important. This lawsuit is further exposing the lows to which Kramer will stoop to attack the First Amendment. This time by calling undercover reporting political spying, Project Veritas said in a statement. Kramer's actions are antithetical to a free press and should be denounced by all reporters. In a setback for O'Keefe, Friedman also ruled that lawyers for Democracy Partners can introduce proof of ties between Project Veritas and Donald Trump. That'll be fun. The evidence includes O'Keefe meeting with Trump during the 2016 campaign and his appearance at Trump's election night party, and could be offered to prove that Project Veritas staffers operated as political operatives instead of as journalists. The plaintiffs also won the right to introduce video of anti-Muslim activist and then Project Veritas employee Laura Loomer hitting a piñata shaped like Hillary Clinton as evidence. That could be a fun trial. Well, we hope it works out and comes out correctly, because then, if not, it will become a frustrating event rather than a fun one. Okay, many other stories to share here. Let's see. Gosh, there's a lot. Here's one that we really ought to catch up on from the New York Times. Meant to try to cram it into the reads from last week. We'll do it now. Trump takes advantage of Wall Street fad to bankroll new venture. You remember our mention of the launch of the 6th, 7th, 18th, 19th attempt at a new social media platform to replace Twitter, from which he is banned. Trump has launched this new thing first after saying he was going to launch a new social media platform, and then it turned out just to be a blog, and then saying that Gab and Parler and Getter and the other various substitutes for Twitter were the ones he really meant and he was totally into, and then they sucked, and now he's launched a new one. And we forget what it's called, but it had something to do with trying to make the name Truth or whatever. Anyway, along with the scam of it being, anything worth a damn, there's a new angle, which is perhaps the more worrisome of the bunch, is that he's found a way to siphon money out of this thing, which perhaps means that it might be around a little bit longer than we'd hoped for, because, it takes a while to steal all the money. So here's the deal. Trump takes advantage of Wall Street fad to bankroll new venture. It's not a non-fungible token, though. It's, instead a merger with a so-called blank check company. I think we made mention of that, and I wasn't entirely sure what the hell they were talking about. Some clarification follows. But a merger with the so-called blank check company is poised to give the former president access to hundreds of millions of dollars. Now, the people behind this blank check company should be aware. If they're not, I will inform them now. The idea here for Donald Trump is there's hundreds of millions of dollars. If I have access to it, I will steal it. Now, if that's your money and you want it, I would watch out. But if the idea is, well, yes, he's going to steal the money, that's called letting him, take a bribe. We've found a way to make it, quote unquote, legal to bribe him. He's not the president now, so maybe it's okay. He might be later, but anyway, this is the mechanism they'll be using, as reported by David Enrich, Matthew Goldstein, and Shane Goldmacher for the New York Times on October 21st. After decades of bankruptcies, loan defaults, business disputes, and commercial failures, not to mention a polarizing presidency that ended up with a violent mob storming the Capitol, and from which he was twice impeached, Donald J. Trump, they didn't say that, believe it or not, Donald J. Trump was shunned by much of corporate America for about 10 seconds. Now, thanks to one of Wall Street's hottest fads, the former president has managed to sidestep that tarnished reputation and gain access to hundreds of millions of dollars to launch a social media company. Riding to his rescue, SPACs, SPACs. I don't know whether anybody calls them SPACs or not, but SPACs. Those are special purpose acquisition companies. And if you are a fan of Steve Martin's The Jerk, then you find that as unintentionally humorous as I do. I didn't even realize you had to acquire one, much less do so with a corporate structure behind you. But okay, special purpose acquisition companies are the reverse of initial public offerings. What does that mean? Well, for one thing, they're sometimes called blank check companies. That doesn't help you understand what it means. But here's what they are. SPACs go public first and raise money from investors with the goal of finding a private company to merge with. Those investors have no clue about what that merger partner will turn out to be. So it's kind of like investing in a private equity firm in a way, except that it's somehow public first. It's not private equity, it's public equity. You buy a share and then they say we're going to amass a certain amount of money and then we'll buy a business and merge with it, and you will be a shareholder in whatever the hell that thing is when all is said and done. I mean, I don't know. Interesting. Why not? If you have people who are gonna, are willing to invest in something sight unseen, without even knowing what it might be, or hearing the name, or having any advance warning of what might get purchased, then I guess fine. It's basically, do you trust this investor to choose something that's going to make you money, and do you not care what that thing is? And do you trust them enough to just say, here's some dollars, go buy a company? It's a little weird, but it's backwards, but I guess it's legit. I don't know. Hasn't been outlawed so far, as I know. So, right. That explains what those things are. And then they pick up with the next paragraph. Those investors have no clue about what the merger partner will turn out to be, which led some of the prominent investors in a SPAC, a special purpose acquisition company. It's difficult whenever the acronym has that vowel sound at the beginning of the first letter, S. It's an S, which isn't a vowel, but it's pronounced ESS, and it's hard to say ASPAC. It's NSPAC is what you want to say. Anyway, this led to some of the prominent investors in a SPAC called Digital World Acquisition. You remember the name? It was very ambitious sounding. Including the hedge funds D.E. Shaw and Saba Capital, to the surprising realization that they were financially backing Mr. Trump's latest company. I guess that's one of the downsides of investing in one of these things. You might end up invested in and partnered with a real turd. And, I guess you could always walk away and sell your share. But especially if you find out that the turd is Donald Trump and realize, if I stay, he's going to steal my money and zero out the value of this stock. Anyway, Mr. Trump's new company, Trump Media and Technology Group, incorporated in Delaware in February with little fanfare and with no revenue or tested business plan. And they reached a deal now to merge with Digital World on Wednesday. Digital World, which was set up shortly after Mr. Trump lost the 2020 election, last month raised nearly $300 million, largely from big investors. Assuming the merger is consummated, that money will soon be bankrolling the Trump media venture, which plans early next year to offer a Twitter-like social media app. It's offered now, and it was hacked on day one. But you go, you $300 million of investment money. I guess there's still time for people to get out, and still time for people as shareholders to say, well, I get a vote of some kind, maybe somewhere, or I'm a big investor, I'm on the board, I vote no on the merger. But we'll see. Shares of the newly merged company soared on Thursday, rising more than 300%. So I guess people are very dumb. To close at $45.50 a share, and partly reflecting expectations that the former president's media company could be very profitable. It's an awfully dumb assumption, folks. SPACs have long had a dubious reputation because they give struggling or untested companies that would otherwise not find backers a pathway to the public markets. But in recent years, these lightly regulated entities have become all the rage because with interest rates remaining low, investors are eager for new places to put their money to work. In the past 2 years alone, such companies have raised $190 billion from investors. But even by Wall Street's frothy standards, the swiftness with which Digital World reached a deal with Mr. Trump, which many in the former president's inner circle didn't know about, was remarkable. Why, it was developed even faster than the vaccines. How could it possibly be safe? But most blank check companies take about 17 months to find a target and complete a deal after going public. Digital World gave itself a year, but found its target within a month of going public. That is an extraordinary time period, said Usha Rodriguez, who teaches corporate law at the University of Georgia's School of Law and has written about SPACs. It's far outside the norm, which I guess raises eyebrows. Digital World's founder and chief executive is Patrick Orlando, who previously worked for, Deutsche Bank. Well, it's true. It's a very large bank. But he previously worked for Deutsche Bank and other Wall Street firms. More recently, Mr. Orlando, who is based in Miami, curiously enough, and knew Mr. Trump before the deal, according to one of Mr. Orlando's colleagues, has launched 3 other blank check companies. While they have raised money from investors, not one has completed a deal. A plan to merge one of the SPACs, Yunhong International, with Giga Energy recently fell apart. Where do you think Yunhong International is from? Just curious. When Digital World went public on the NASDAQ stock exchange last month, it didn't have the assistance of a brand name investment bank. Instead, it turned to a small firm that until recently was called Kingswood Capital Markets. This summer, Kingswood changed its name to E.F. Hutton. Can you do that? Change its name to E.F. Hutton, adopting one of Wall Street's most storied brands, presumably in a bid to improve its marketing cachet. The original E.F. Hutton was famous for the advertising slogan, "When E.F. Hutton talks, people listen." If you're old enough, you remember those ads. Joseph Rallo, E.F. Hutton's chief executive, didn't respond to requests for comment. Now, is Joseph Rallo formerly Kingswood Capital Markets CEO? Or, is there no more E.F.? I guess there's no actual E.F. Hutton anymore. Is there there's nothing standing in the way of just saying, yeah, I'm changing our company's name to J.P. Morgan? I guess if there's still an active Morgan, a corporation, then I guess they would stand. But that's really strange. Well, with the help of bankers at the newly renamed E.F. Hutton, Mr. Orlando and Digital World lined up 11 hedge funds and other institutional investors to serve as so-called anchor investors. They agreed to buy substantial slugs of shares in Digital World's public stock offering on September 8th. I guess ordinarily you might stand up, regulators might say, now, renaming themselves E.F. Hutton and then just grabbing at the money, that can't be allowed. But if you're lining up hedge funds and other institutional investors to start you off, they are, in securities law, they're presumed to be sophisticated investors. And that's a term that has some real meaning to it. And you can sell supposedly sophisticated investors less regulated garbage. The idea being here, as long as you're not offering it to the public at large where people might be naive about how to invest, as opposed to these sophisticated investors, they're supposed to know the risks that they're taking, and they generally do. But it prevents them from suing later on. All right, well, that's really interesting and weird. As is standard in blank check deals, the investors in some cases ponied up as much as $30 million without much guidance as to how Digital World would spend their money, officials at several of the hedge funds said. All they knew was what Digital World said in its securities filing, that it was looking to invest in, quote, middle market emerging growth technology-focused companies. Didn't give any hint it was hoping to merge with a social media company or work with the former president. Vik Mittal, chief investment officer with Meteora Capital, one of the anchor investors, said the firm wasn't aware of an imminent deal with Mr. Trump's media company when it committed money to Mr. Orlando's SPAC. Mr. Orlando negotiated the deal with Mr. Trump, with whom he had a relationship. I'm the CEO of the SPAC, and the conversations were generally at the highest levels, Mr. Orlando said in a brief interview on Thursday. He declined to comment on the details of the agreement or how it came together. Everybody worked really hard, 24 hours a day, he said. I don't think that that's the case. Mr. Trump, for his part, kept much of his inner circle in the dark. His plans had not come up on his political team's weekly calls, according to participants. Trump Media and Technology Group, whose website lists Mr. Trump's private club, Mar-a-Lago, as its mailing address, has grand ambitions. A slide presentation on the company's website envisions it competing not only with Twitter and Facebook, but also against companies like Netflix, Disney, and CNN. In the long-term opportunity category, the company lists Google and Amazon as potential rivals. Mr. Trump's yet-to-be-launched app is called Truth Social. Within hours of its announcement, hackers claim to have created fake accounts on unreleased test version of the name, in the name of Mr. Trump and others. Okay, that answers that question. Some Republican groups immediately sought to use the announcement of the social media site for fundraising purposes. Interesting. The Republican National Committee, for instance, sent a breaking news email on Thursday asking supporters if they would join the site. The hedge funds that invested in Digital World appear to have profited, at least on paper, given the stock's steep rise on Thursday. Keep an eye on that. One of Digital World's major investors was Saba Capital, a $3.5 billion hedge fund. Oh, we could use that for paying for reconciliation. Seize that hedge fund. Oh, I'm sorry. Was that trillion? Okay. No. Just a billion, just a little bit stuff. Okay. Oh, we missed our cue on the music, so we're going to have to cut out earlier than usual in the music. That'll make for some editing fun later on. Anyway, let's see. The head of Saba Capital, Boaz Weinstein. I feel like I've heard that name before. Weinstein said on Thursday that after learning of the Trump deal, his firm sold much of its stake in Digital World in the early morning. Funny. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Again, coming back at a funny point in the music, but doing so to keep track of the timing of our breaks. Just a sentence or two left in this New York Times piece about Trump and his use of the SPACs to fund his alleged new digital media or social media venture here. I had mentioned to you that one of the major investors was Saba Capital, $3.5 billion hedge fund, run by Boaz Weinstein. And I thought the name was familiar, and it really isn't. But, I mean, maybe it's familiar to you. There is a connection here, so I'll go on to read it. Mr. Weinstein said on Thursday, of course, though, that after learning about the Trump deal, his firm sold much, I don't know how it's most, but sold a significant amount anyway, I guess, much of its stake in Digital World in the early morning, notching a small profit before the shares soared higher. Mr. Weinstein's wife, Tali Farhadian Weinstein. Does that ring a bell for anybody? She recently ran unsuccessfully for Manhattan District Attorney as a Democrat. So maybe that's where it came from. I don't know. Maybe it's just a wacky name and I felt like I heard it before. Many investors are grappling with hard questions about how to incorporate their values into their work, Mr. Weinstein said in a statement. For us, this was not a close call. Okay. Probably a good idea in general. There was, I'm sure, a little bit more profit to be reaped there before you sold out, but that clearly isn't a huge issue for Mr. Weinstein, head of a $3.5 billion hedge fund. I'm sure they got all the money they need, so they were happy to jump out early. And I don't know. Well, I guess we'll have to wait and see whether a long position in Digital World / Trump media works out for people, or whether it ends up being a pump and dump stock bubble, or whether it gets manipulated by the GameStop stock manipulators for lulls. We'll see. That's a possibility too. I highly recommend it if you can make it work. Seems like it would be a fun thing to do. All right. Don't do anything illegal or whatever. And if you do, don't tell anybody I told you to do it, because that would be bad for me. Okay, let's see. Other fun stories to share with you. I thought this was kind of an interesting take from the folks over at the Washington Post. The Washington Post had an interesting view of things. Like, they found an opportunity to blame Democrats for stuff Republicans are doing, and why not share that? A editorial, I guess, by the entire editorial board over at the Washington Post, looking for some way to take Terry McAuliffe to task before he gets elected governor of Virginia again. Terry McAuliffe, they say in their headline, should not fan the flames of voter suspicion. Yes, that is chiefly a Democratic trait, isn't it? Here's the way they approach it. If there's one thing that former President Donald Trump, you might recognize the name, Donald Trump, not actually a Democrat, probably the biggest practitioner of fanning the flames of voter suspicion. But why roast him for it when you could turn to Terry McAuliffe, a Democrat, instead, right? If there's one thing that former President Donald Trump has taught us, it's how toxic to the system it is to question the legitimacy of election results. Mr. Trump continues to lie about his resounding loss in 2020 and insist that other Republicans accept the lie, too. In the Virginia gubernatorial race, love it, Glenn Youngkin, the Republican nominee, has indulged Mr. Trump's falsehoods while seeking not to embrace them so wholeheartedly as to alienate suburban voters who don't buy them. That's what we call normal people here in Virginia. Mr. Youngkin, a fresh face in politics, had the opportunity to tell voters frankly that the system worked in 2020. He chose not to. All right, well, that's the thing that you should be writing about. That's the bad thing that happened. But instead, it's this that they focus on. That made it all the more disappointing to hear Mr. Youngkin's Democratic opponent, Terry McAuliffe, fanning the flames of suspicion over the weekend among his supporters. Campaigning with Stacey Abrams, who lost a race for governor in Georgia in 2018, Mr. McAuliffe said, Ms. Abrams, quote, would be the governor of Georgia today had not the state, quote, disenfranchised 1.4 million Georgia voters before the election. That's what happened to Stacey Abrams, Mr. McAuliffe said. They took the votes away. Now, unlike Mr. Trump's wild lies about millions of fraudulent voters, and who cares about them, there's some basis for Mr. McAuliffe's statement. Oh, that's different, because we keep publishing stories that say that Trump has said these things without any basis. But here, Mr. McAuliffe has a basis. But let's ignore that there's a basis for just a moment and say that Mr. Trump says things and Mr. McAuliffe says things. Some of the things Mr. Trump says are about elections. Some of the things Mr. McAuliffe says are also about elections. Do you see where we're going with this? Well, unlike Mr. Trump's wild lies about millions of fraudulent voters, there's some basis for Mr. McAuliffe's statement. He was referring to the number of people purged from the voting rolls for various reasons between 2012 and 2018. In the year before the election, nearly 700,000 were purged, more Democrats than Republicans, and the person in charge of the operation was Brian Kemp, who was both Secretary of State at the time and Ms. Abrams' opponent in the race for governor. But, as the Post's fact checker has written, many were purged from the rolls for entirely legitimate reasons, such as they were dead. The turnout in 2018 was higher than in any previous midterm. There is no way to know whether Ms. Abrams would have won if Georgia's registration laws and practices had been different. Aha! So same, right? Election expert Richard L. Hazen, we hear about him all the time, told the fact checker in 2019 that he knew of no evidence to prove that Ms. Abrams would have been elected had the rolls not been purged, but added, that seems to me to be beside the point. The question is whether Georgia had a good reason to put these suppressive measures in place. And for the most part, the state did not have good reasons. Which points to the right response. And that is the route Ms. Abrams, for the most part, has been following. Push for laws and practices that encourage voting rather than suppressing it. Mr. McAuliffe would do well to stick to that effort, avoiding unprovable allegations that will contribute to the corrosion of trust. Well, I'm not so sure. I mean, I think it probably will contribute to the corrosion of mistrust, but or the corrosion of trust and the rise of mistrust. I'd like to see the corrosion of mistrust, I suppose. But I do want to point out that I do think, legitimately do believe that behind all of this is the additional plot, the additional benefit to the Republican plot here is when we do finally exercise and make use of the new laws that we're passing to make it possible for us to manipulate the outcome of an election or just throw out the actual outcome of an election and substitute in the one we prefer, which I think is the end goal. We were discussing it right at the close of yesterday's show. Again, that, for instance, that Brad Raffensperger is no hero here. It's just that he felt like if the law could be tweaked, then I would be able to do what Trump wants. But as it stands, I can't do it. Not only will it be illegal and silly looking, it'll get reversed and land me on the wrong side of history in general because it's so obvious that the interpretation is wrong. But if we could change the text of the law such that that interpretation was right, then I would happily go ahead and do so. So please do that, Georgia State Legislature, and that's what they're doing. And at any rate, when those laws come into effect and they actually use them to reverse or just throw out, manipulate, reverse, throw out the results of elections that they don't like, at that point, when Democrats complain about it and raise the issue, they'll say, oh, look at who thinks that elections are fraudulent now. You said all of our howling about the 2020 election having been manipulated or stolen was fake news. But now that the shoe's on the other foot and you lost the election or we stole it from you, who's crying about fraud now? And I think that that's the intention, to make it look like Democrats catching Republicans in the actual act is the same as Republicans making up stories about the act having taken place in 2020 and in searching for evidence of those acts taking place find nothing but Republicans that they end up having to convict of voter fraud, and certainly find no evidence of the massive numbers of fraudulent ballots that they claim are out there. But I do think that they intend to make this reversal and use it against Democrats who complain, if it happens, will be complaining rightly about Republican cheating and manipulation as soon as 2022 and certainly in the presidential election of 2024. So thanks a lot for doing that work for them, Washington Post. That's kind of the business that they're in these days. All right, there's more. Let's see if I can't figure out. Let's see, what's this one about? Some of these. This was an interesting article that I found last night. Relevant, of course, to the whole genre of misinformation, disinformation, cheating in general on public policy making, but an obscure setting for it. I put aside this piece, which actually looks fairly lengthy, but let's read through it just so that you're aware of it. It's just breaking through into the news now. New York Times piece from the 24th, Reed Epstein, writing a piece called Where Facts Were No Match for Fear. Civic boosters in central Montana hoped for some federal money to promote tourism, and then a disinformation campaign got in the way. You wouldn't think that that anyone would bother with disinformation campaign about federal money to promote tourism in Montana, but it happened. And maybe this will take us, this could take us all the way to the break and to our date with destiny, I guess you could say, and our call from Joan McCarter. This is a very exciting name for the call from Joan this Tuesday. The Date with Destiny. We don't know why it's called that. In fact, it's not. I'm making it up. I said without basis, as they say in the newspapers. All right. Well, here's the story, datelined from Great Falls, Montana. In the summer of 2020, As pandemic shutdowns, closed businesses, and racial justice protests erupted on American streets, Ray Grulkowski, a 56-year-old businesswoman who had never been involved in politics, but all of a sudden had to get involved for some reason, but was alarmed about what was happening to the country, yikes, found a way to make a difference. Now, it's funny. I have a feeling that we will, by the end of this article, come to the conclusion that Ray Grulkowski's alarm about what was happening to the country is one of those very particular kinds of alarm about, quote unquote, what is happening to the country that aligns, well, let's say about, I'll put a number on it, 100%, for instance, with MAGA Trumpkin deplorables and their worry about what's happening to the country. You know, economic anxiety about the country, as opposed to the correct conclusion that there ought to be alarm about what's happening to the country, given that we're in the middle of racial justice protests erupting all over the country and a global pandemic and a shutdown from that global pandemic. There's lots of reasons to be alarmed about what was happening in the country, but Ray Grulkowski chose economic anxiety, essentially. And let's see what she does with it. The connection to the turbulence of national politics might not have been immediately clear. Ms. Grulkowski had just heard about the years-in-the-making effort to designate her corner of central Montana a national heritage area, celebrating its role in the story of the American West. Good thing, right? Yeah, thumbs up. A small pot of federal matching money was there for the taking to help draw more visitors and preserve underfunded local tourist attractions. Good, yes. Ms. Grulkowski, because she's a deplorable economic anxiety freak, set about blowing up that effort with everything she had. Seems weird. She collected addresses from a list of voters and spent $1,300, sending a packet denouncing the proposed heritage area to 1,498 farmers and ranchers. She told them the designation would forbid landowners to build sheds, drill wells, or use fertilizers and pesticides. It would alter water rights, give tourists access to private property, create new taxation districts, and prohibit new septic systems and burials on private land, she said. None of this was true, but it is time for something. I don't know what. Well, anyway, not my alarm. But none of this was true, as you might imagine, yet it soon became accepted as truth by enough people to persuade Montana's leading Republican figures. Who else would jump on this dumb bandwagon, right? They're leading Republican figures in conservative organizations, including the Farm Bureau, which could pick up the phone and effing check whether it was true or not. How about this guy, Governor Greg Gianforte? He could check. And Senator Steve Daines. They all knew better, but they all jumped on the bandwagon anyway and opposed the proposal to enact a state law, opposed the proposal, and that is to support the enactment of a state law forbidding the federal government to create any heritage area in Montana. No heritage here. Get out. It is a ban that the state has no authority to enforce. But who cares, right? Economic anxiety. Which is how a humble bid for a small serving of Washington pork by a group of local civic boosters became yet another nasty skirmish in the bitter nationwide struggle between the forces of fact and fantasy. From her point of view, the tale of Ms. Grulkowski's one-woman crusade is a stirring reminder of the power of political activism. True. I mean, there's that. I thought, here's the world going crazy, she said, explaining her motivation in an unintentionally humorous way. Like, look at me. Here's the world going crazy. She, of course, is convinced it's the rest of the world that's crazy. For instance, don't they know that it will prohibit you from drilling wells on your land or building new septic systems or building sheds or altering water rights or let tourists walk all over your private property? Don't they know that? The world's crazy that they don't know that. Well, none of that is true. So actually the crazy call is coming from inside the house, Ray. Well, here's the world going crazy, she said, explaining her motivation. From the vantage point of informed democratic decision-making, who cares about that, right? It's a haunting tale about how a sustained political campaign can succeed despite, or perhaps as a result of, being divorced from reality. Like, that's better. It might be as a result of. Like, oh, you made that up? Fantastic. Rather adopt that position. I'm nuts. Let me in. Misinformation is the new playbook. Bob Kelly, the mayor of Great Falls, said, you don't like something? Or you don't even know why you don't like it, right? You don't like something? Create alternative facts and figures as a way to undermine reality. The dispute has split communities, become a wedge issue in this fall's political campaigns, and left proponents of the heritage area flummoxed at their collective inability to refute falsehoods once they have become accepted wisdom. We've run into the uneducable Ellen Sievert, a retired historic preservation officer for Great Falls and surrounding Cascade County, said, I don't know how we get through that. I thought that the word might be ineducable, but this is uneducable, and maybe that works too. Anyway, most of the heritage area's key supporters are Democrats, and virtually all of its opponents are Republicans, but partisanship doesn't explain everyone's positions. Steve Taylor, a former mayor of Neihart, Neihart. I can't ask anybody how to pronounce it because it's got a population of 43. So I don't think I know any of them. But if you do, check it out. Anyway, he's the former mayor of this town whose family owns a car dealership in Great Falls, not in town because there's only 43 people there. He's a conservative who voted for Donald Trump twice, though he says he has regretted those votes since the January 6th Capitol riot. You like that? Fellow Republicans, he said, have painted the heritage area as a liberal plot. They make it a political thing because if you have a Democrat involved, then they are all against it, he said. It's so hard to build something and so easy to tear it down. It's maddening. It's so easy to destroy something with untruths. Yes, it is. Congress and President Ronald Reagan, by the way, created national heritage areas in the 1980s as a partnership between the National Park Service and local boosters who were required to match federal investment with funds raised locally. So as you know, QAnon, I think, is pretty clear about it. Ronald Reagan is actually a pedophile vampire. And so obviously his creation of the National Heritage Area is a bad, bad thing. Something Democrats, I don't know what, blah, blah, blah. But, oh, you say Ronald Reagan is actually a Republican and a huge hero? Well, opposite, sis, boom, bah, magic, poof. There you go. We're against it anyway. That's it. They don't know about this. And I'm sure the dismissal is a lot easier than that. Nuh-uh, it wasn't Reagan, it was Obama. All right. Sure, whatever. The 55 existing heritage areas in 34 states recognize, among other histories, metropolitan Detroit's automotive background, Utah's Mormon pioneers, and Tennessee's part in the Civil War, the losing part. They collectively receive about $21 million annually, a pittance in the Park Service's $3.5 billion budget. There it is again, 3.5, except here billion. It's just the size of the hedge fund, not the reconciliation bill. And have no impact on private property rights, by the way, a finding confirmed in a 2004 report by the U.S. General Accounting Office. The proposal for the Big Sky Country National Heritage Area, encompassing most of 2 central Montana counties that are together roughly the size of Connecticut, was the brainchild of Jane Weber, a U.S. Forest Service retiree who spent a decade on the Cascade County Commission. Beginning in 2013, Ms. Weber teamed up with local preservationists, formed a nonprofit, like there's a lot of work involved in this, enlisted local businesses, and raised $50,000 for a required feasibility study. In 2014, the Great Falls City Commission included the heritage area as part of its official growth policy, right? Doing all the things she needs to do, working all the angles she's supposed to work. The proposal would take in 4 National Historic Landmarks, Lewis and Clark's Portage Route around Great Falls, Fort Benton, a pioneer town along the Missouri River that was the last stop for steamships heading west from St. Louis in the 1800s, the First Peoples Buffalo Jump, a steep cliff over which Blackfoot hunters herded buffalo to their deaths, and the home and studio of C.M. Russell, the turn-of-the-century cowboy artist whose paintings of the American West shaped the popular image of frontier life. The Park Service requires demonstrations of public support, which Ms. Weber and her allies solicited. For 6 years, the process went on, largely undisturbed. Ms. Weber hosted dozens of public meetings and was a regular on local radio stations. Opponents scarcely made a peep. Then the 2020 political season arrived. With the coronavirus ravaging the economy and protests lighting up her computer screen, not her actual world, but her computer screen, Ms. Grulkowski said she walked into a local Republican Party office one day and asked what she could do to help. Okay, fine. Someone told her to attend a meeting, so she did. There, she heard a presentation by Jenny Dodd, Jeni, Jenny Dodd, a former reporter for the Great Falls Tribune who was running in a Republican primary for the Montana State Senate. Ms. Dodd had latched on to the heritage area as a waste of public money and a thicket of conflicts of interest for board members and elected officials. She wrote essays in local weeklies and started a Facebook group calling the proposal a Big Sky Boondoggle. It didn't get much traction. But Ms. Grulkowski's interest was piqued. At the time, she was becoming engrossed in the online world of far-right media. Ooh, boy. From her home on 34 acres in Stockett, a farming community of 157 people, south of Great Falls, she watched videos from outlets like His Glory TV, which sounds a little dangerous, where hosts refer to President Biden as, quote, the so-called president. Oh, you could be listening to our show where I referred to Trump that way. She subscribed to the Telegram messaging channel of Seth Keshel, a prolific disinformation spreader. And she came across a vein of conspiratorial accusations that national heritage areas were a kind of Trojan horse that could open the door to future federal land grabs. Sure, why not? When Ms. Grulkowski, who owns a septic cleaning company, this is somebody you want to hang out with. Somebody's got to do this job, but I mean, weird. Okay, I mean, like I said, somebody has to do the job. I wouldn't choose it, but I'm guessing it's good money, I hope. Anyway, she tried using Ms. Dodd's group to push the idea that Montanans' property rights were at risk. Ms. Dodd kicked her out for promoting lies. All right. I'm not happy with people saying it will seize your property because that is disingenuous, Ms. Dodd said. I said to her, I think you need to be careful about the message. It isn't actually the way that it works, what you're saying. But Ms. Grulkowski plowed ahead. One of her letters reached Ed Bandel, the local board member for the Montana Farm Bureau Federation, a powerful lobbying force. Mr. Bandel, who grows wheat and peas for energy bars, I guess, and other things, but it happens to be that's who buys this stuff, energy bars, on 3,000 acres, persuaded the Farm Bureau to oppose the heritage area and enlisted other agricultural groups to follow suit. I don't know how, he just did. The Bureau printed thousands of 4-by-6-inch cards saying, just say no, not why, just do it, and listing Ms. Grulkowski's Facebook group and other opponents, including realtors, home builders, grain growers, stock growers, and wool growers. Mr. Bandel and his son and Ms. Grulkowski left the cards on tables at supportive restaurants. By May, their campaign had reached the state capitol, where Mr. Gianforte signed the bill barring any national heritage area in Montana after it passed on a near-party line vote. A heritage area, the bill's text asserted, would interfere with state and private property rights. In 2 hours of talking at his farm, Mr. Bandel could offer no evidence to back up that claim. He said he distrusted assurances that there were no such designs. They say, don't worry, we're going to do it right. Don't worry, we'll take care of you. I think Adolf Hitler said that too, didn't he? I mean, it's literally what he says here. Mr. Bandel said, the fear of the unknown is a huge fear. And you're a very scared guy, I guess. Mr. Bandel said he trusted Ms. Grulkowski with the details. But when pressed, Ms. Grokowski, too, was unable to identify a single instance of a property owner's being adversely affected by a heritage area. It's not that there are a lot of specific instances, she said. There's a lot of very wide open things that could happen. And I guess that's enough for her. That somewhat amorphous fear was more the point. Outside, and there's more here, and we go on for a little bit, but I think we'll run into our... we won't make it in the last 30 seconds of the music. And, of course, Joan McCarter will be joining us after the break. But you get the idea. I wonder if there's similar activity about other things like this. I don't know if there's any heritage areas being proposed out there in Idaho, but if so, look out. You're going to get local and federal investment in tourism. Eek!
Hi, I'm Scott Anderson, the guy that writes the daily summary for this show, Kagro in the Morning. Thank you to everyone that supports this show. Many of you send donations through PayPal, Patreon, Square Cash, Radio Public, and so on. Some of you write your own essays and send them in, or read articles with your own commentary. We appreciate it. Now, some of you are listening to this and thinking, I'd like to help, but isn't there something I could do that wouldn't require money or effort? Why, yes, there is. You can just like us. On Daily Kos, they call it the recommend button. YouTube has a thumbs up. There are hearts and likes and love buttons. Tap our love button. Tap our love button every day. Share our shows and summaries on Facebook and Twitter, YouTube and iTunes, Stitcher and Amazon. Most of these places allow you to write a review, so a sentence or two would be great. Recommend us to social media, or tell your friends to listen to the show. You aren't just helping us, you're helping them find their new favorite thing to listen to. You could change the world. So thank you in advance from me and everybody else in the world.
All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Joan McCarter is with us. We're ready to roll on her segment. I just wanted to say, for the sake of fairness, for anybody who hasn't read the story yet, if you're wondering, well, how do you know that she's, the kind of Q-loon that you say she is? And the answer is, I just read more of it. I mean, I think it was pretty obvious anyway, but here, the next paragraph, and after this, I'll drop the story because then you'll have the idea, I think. It says, outside of a poultry coop as her chickens and ducks squawked. That's not the important part. But Ms. Grokowski ticked through the falsehood she had read online and accepted as truths in the past year. So she's doing really well this past year. One, they're not numbered, but the COVID vaccine is more dangerous than the coronavirus. Well, that's not good. Global child trafficking rings control the political system. Okay, now we know what we're talking about here. Q, just as suspected. But also, just for good measure, Black Lives Matter was responsible for the January 6th attack on the Capitol. The United Nations is plotting to control world population and seize private land. That's a good old-timey one. I like that. Mr. Trump was the rightful winner of last year's election. And to top that one off, even in Cascade County, where Mr. Trump won 59% of the vote, Grokowski still argues that 3,000 illegal votes were cast. So, I guess chances are that the bulk of them, say 59% or so in a normal distribution, would be illegally cast for Mr. Trump. But I guess not. And I'm guessing that there aren't a whole lot of, it's not a big pot of votes from Cascade County, Montana, I would guess. 3,000 of them are illegal. And, of course, they're all for Democrats. And
the population of Cascade County is about, let's see. I'm looking for it. I think I saw 5,000?
5,000.
No, it's bigger.
Oh, okay. I mean,
it's bigger.
Well, so there's possible room.
81,000
all right.
in the whole county.
That's like the whole state.
But
how many are, I guess registered voters?
22% of those are under age 18. And thus are not voting.
Yes. Well, that's what made their votes illegal, I guess. I don't know what. Yeah, what's the, let's see. Registered voters in Cascade County, Montana. And Google's just going to go, I don't know. And neither does anybody else. I don't know if anybody has the number offhand. But anyway, 3,000 votes illegal is an awfully large chunk. And I would guess might almost necessarily have to include some Republican votes if it were true, which it's not. And I'm wasting my time and yours. So I'll move on from that. I just thought, in case anybody was interested in some proof that she was every bit the loon that we made her out to be, there it is. So now you know we're not being unfair. But other than that, what's going on?
Well, no, she was the one that was trying to get all of these special areas established.
She was the one trying to stop it from being established.
Ah, okay.
Yes, she wanted the local civic group said, wouldn't it be great if we could get all this federal money to help promote tourism here in Montana? After all, the economy's having a rough time. We're all in lockdown, et cetera, et cetera. What could we do? And they did 6 years of work and gathering all, these things require all sorts of studies be done and local expressions of support and getting incorporated into the development plans of the local political entities, counties and municipalities. And then at the last minute, in comes this lady who says, they're all going to drink your blood. And so, and it results in the governor of Montana saying, you're right, they are going to drink our blood. I'm signing this bill to ban the establishment of heritage areas in Montana, an authority I do not have, backed by Steve Daines. At the highest levels of government in Montana, they all bought into vampires will drink your blood and you won't be able to build any sheds or septic systems in Montana anymore. All right. Fine. So that's it. No federal money for you.
It's yeah, I don't understand. I mean,
yeah.
I don't know what percentage of Montana's GDP comes from tourism, but it's huge.
You would think it would be a great place to go as a tourist. But but don't, because something vampires, maybe, I don't know. But yeah, I mean, I get where it's coming from in the sense that a lot of super conservative Westerners are of the view that almost anything that the federal government is involved in there will result in, whatever this means, a land grab. That might be a legitimate thing. It might not be, but that's the thing. That scares the pants off of people in the West. They have land. And if you say someone's going to grab it, that's bad. But that's all the inquiry there has to be.
Coming from somebody from Southern California, as Greg Gianforte is.
Oh, is that right? Well, now he's covetous of the land.
It wasn't that long ago that Conrad Burns, it was 2006, in fact, Conrad Burns, who had been senator for ever in Montana, was beat by John Tester, native-born son, because originally Burns had come from Missouri, I think, or Kansas, one of the two.
Offhand, but yeah, okay.
And, despite the fact that he'd been serving as senator for, 4 terms or something, people were actually saying, I heard people say, because I was there in Montana in 2006, I heard people say, well, he's not really from here.
Well, whatever.
And now they've elected, of all things, of all of the evils that used to exist in Montana, being from Southern California,
my goodness,
and moving into the state,
I know,
was pretty much it.
The only thing worse would be voting for that other jar of picante sauce from New York City.
Yeah.
My gosh.
But, man. Nope, he's from San Diego.
Okay. Well, I guess he found the wide open spaces more attractive, and now he doesn't want anybody else to find them attractive. Get out of here. I found this attractive first. No coming and gawking at our sights. Yeah. Well, that's sad, but I just thought, not on our radar screens here, but just indicative of the kind of thing we're dealing with all over the place, of course, on the national level, and everybody doing everything they can in the Republican Party to nationalize every issue, whether it's, salient or grounded in truth or not. Now you're all finding your school boards under attack and school board members ducking assassination threats left and right, and that the idea that you should maybe get the FBI to investigate who's threatening to assassinate all these elected officials is somehow even worse than where we started. Now the FBI is going to come for every parent in America who dares to raise their voice and threaten the lives of their elected school board. But never mind that. Hand wave.
How's that playing in Virginia, by the way?
Well, it's not going over big in our corner of the Commonwealth, because no one's really enjoying the notoriety for Loudoun County,
right,
having been in the news like 3 times in a row over mask mandates, over fake critical race theory issues, and now over this trumped up story around an actual but terrible story that has turned into it's landed at the point where we now have, I don't know if you know the background of the story over transgender student rights that's now occupying our time, but I think you could probably guess.
Yes, I've seen the basic outlines of where it started.
And so now it's landed at the point where Republican operatives are saying things like, as President Obama was campaigning for Terry McAuliffe over the weekend and saying, enough of this nonsense, trumped up social or culture war stuff. Let's focus on the stuff that matters, which, okay. It's a good idea, but that was the speech, but that then got translated into President Obama supports raping girls in the bathroom. All right. Yeah, we're going to have discourse here. This is great.
This poor young woman.
Yeah. I don't know. I wondered about this. Like, did her dad, maybe they're steeped in Republican politics and she's not that worried about it being used this way. But on the other hand, she's like 14 when this happened. She might not know anything about it. And all of a sudden her dad is on TV saying, here's my name and guess what happened to my daughter. So that probably really didn't make her very happy. And usually we go out of our way not to put the name in the paper so that something like this doesn't happen. But this guy decided, not only am I going to put my name in the paper, but by the way, I'm going to go to the papers via the Daily Wire and the Daily Caller. Those will be the newspapers I tell my story to. It means nothing, and we've been talking about it here at home. Like, okay, maybe, I guess it's possible you could be frustrated at trying to get the media to tell your story and no one will tell it. And then the first people who do turn out to be lunatic right-wing publications. And then you just say, well, whoever will get my story out, I don't care. But as it turns out, I think he was originally...
Yeah, I think as it turns out he did.
Interested in those
local media,
but
the local television station is always going to welcome a story like
that. And they were there, right. I remember now that you mentioned it. Seven on Your Side was at the meeting to ask these questions, but he didn't speak to them. He spoke to these other outlets, the fair and balanced people, not even the Fox ones. But it's bad news, and I think but they really thought that they could latch onto that and use it, as Greg Green said, as an October surprise for Youngkin. Except, early voting actually is taking the air out of a lot of October surprises these days. A lot of people have already cast their ballots, and this Commonwealth, I have to remember to say rather than state, but here in Virginia, a lot of, the bulk of the voting is driven by Northern Virginia suburbs and some of the urban centers in central and southern Virginia too, but which are Democratic leaning. And this is, things are still close, and the polling is usually rotten at this level, and it's difficult to tell. So they're now spooking everybody in the last week about how close the race is, and some of that you can't separate from GOTV efforts. But I don't know.
The early vote is looking very good for McAuliffe, though, right? Last I saw.
Well, I hope so. Yeah, there's good and bad signs and everything, and trying to read these tea leaves. But the numbers in the right areas are up. We're all done here in this house. So if it was a tie, I said I would go out and break it, and I guess I did. So, but there were people collecting signatures for recall of the school board there at the early voting site. And of course, we have another one of those dumb laws where it takes only 10% of registered voters to get a recall on the ballot. So that's annoying. We've got to fix some of these things around the country. It's way too easy to get recalls on the ballot. Recalls the next election, guys. That's it. So that's how it's playing around here. And in the suburbs, mostly people saying, look, these guys are nuts. This idea that what's really to be distilled out of this controversy is that the true position of Democrats is they don't want parents having any role in education, but Republicans want to, they just want to welcome parents into a cooperative agreement. Like, I don't know, maybe there should be a parent-teacher association of some kind, and they could come together and be an innovation.
Do bake sales.
Yeah, right, to raise money for things at the school and have a voice in how things go at the school. We're the party of ideas here in the Republican Party. But everybody here is in these things. They know what is, and luckily in this area, at least there's a decent base of people who say, well, I'm a Republican, but I know the people who are on the school board. And I know they're not vampire pedophiles. I'm certain of that. I don't agree with them, and I didn't vote for them, but our kids are in scouts together, and she didn't eat any of them. So, that could be enough. But still, there are crazy people around. So, in the meantime, things happening in D.C. Been fun to watch details emerge about January 6th, and things looking worse than ever.
And things are looking worse than ever. The revelation that these half dozen members of Congress, most of whom had been sworn in for 2 hot seconds, were behind the whole thing. We kind of knew that already. I mean,
right? There were those accusations
that they were plotting in this whole thing.
Right, leading tours, talking to weirdo outside groups. It was very surprising to find out how, 3 of them that I knew of who were literally 3 days on the job, suddenly at the White House. Like, that never happens.
Yeah.
And that apparently Green, there's now video of her emerging from a meeting in the White House before she was sworn in, like in December, like late December. She comes out, and I don't know who was videoing her. I imagine she set it up herself, and one of her staffers with a phone videoed her emerging from the White House and saying that they had such a good, productive meeting. And it's like, you're not even sworn in yet.
Yeah.
Odd that they came, and the first order of business was this.
To meet with Marjorie Taylor Greene, freshman from Georgia.
Right.
Yeah.
Not your typical White House agenda, but hey,
no,
it wasn't your typical White House. And then we found out that they also had to have Andrew Lloyd Webber music on hand to keep
him from
freaking out or something. Yeah.
Oh.
I'm telling you, I want to reopen the investigation into the Gorilla Channel. That was real. I don't care what anybody says.
All of this, investigations,
yes.
Donald Trump. Why is Christopher Wray still at the FBI? Tell me.
Oh, well, term of years on his appointment, and we're afraid to do things that are bad looking, and something norms, I think, if there are any left. Yeah, I guess he and... Well, people ask that question about him, about Louis DeJoy. You're both of those people, as a matter of fact. What else?
Reddick at IRS.
Oh. Yeah, I see that's been a topic for you. Who else is on the list?
That's what I was pondering yesterday. At first I was thinking, the whole $600 bank reporting to the
Yes.
IRS thing that was a big fluff last week?
Yeah, they thought they were going to go further on that, I think, but what was that?
At first, I was postulating that this IRS director, who was appointed by Trump, cooked this one up to put into the budget request from the White House for how the IRS is going to beef up enforcement and get all the money that's owed.
Mm-hmm.
That it was Reddick who came up with this $600 in a bank account idea.
I
Just
see.
as a little bit of sabotage. I haven't been able to nail that down. I'm not sure that that's where it came from.
It's the working theory.
I don't understand why anybody would think having $600 in a bank account should trigger reporting to the IRS. I think that's kind of silly. And yes, Democrats agreed, and they've raised that amount to $10,000 because that's more like a money laundering kind of sum that makes sense. So anyway, I'm thinking about Reddick and whether or not he was behind this ridiculous idea sort of sent me down the rabbit hole of who else is in there that Biden really should be getting a move on in replacing.
Yeah.
And just filling positions. He's doing great on lower courts. He's putting really good people in, and that's fantastic, and the Senate is working hard at it. But then there are things like the FCC, which could revert to Republican control just by default by the end of the year. If he doesn't get the commissioner, the director approved and find a new commissioner.
Yeah.
Because they're missing a person, and Rosenworcel, I think that's how you pronounce her name.
I don't know.
Is sitting in sort of interim. Her appointment is extended from her commission seat, which has already ended, but there's the grace period. So she's filling in as director in the interim, but that ends at the end of this year.
Okay.
So yeah, the FCC is kind of important, net neutrality, all of those things.
Yeah.
And it would be kind of good if Biden had a full FCC, not to mention the fact that he has a lot of great regulatory plans in that area that can't really be carried out until he's got a full FCC to do it.
Okay.
But in a lot of areas, a lot of his agenda is going to be dependent upon the people that he has in place to fulfill it. And there are still a lot of Trump people in place.
Yeah, well, that's very often the case.
There. And there are a lot of vacancies.
Yeah, well, the vacancies you'd think you could fill up relatively quickly, but then again, if any of them are Senate confirmations, although you can no longer filibuster them.
The problem is the number of Senate confirmations and the fact that Joe Manchin has the Senate tied in knots.
Yes. So, okay, that could be problematic. And, of course, we've always been worried about embedding former administration supporters, basically people who would otherwise ordinarily find themselves in political appointment jobs, getting embedded in civil service jobs instead, from which you can't dislodge them. That's the plan.
That's the plan, and there was quite a bit of that with Trump, because there always is with Republican administrations. They seem more intent upon doing that than Democratic administrations, unfortunately.
Well, we don't like breaking norms, even if the norms
have
been destroyed.
Norms.
Right, I was just thinking about that yesterday. What was it? Jack Goldsmith was saying something about, it's just as bad when Biden breaks norms as when Trump breaks norms, and here he's breaking a same norm you all took Trump to task for, and it's like, well, right, that means it's not a norm anymore. It's not around. It was broken by Trump. We don't just revert to norms because we've switched parties. That's not the way things actually work, and you actually know that. But even so, those people that have embedded in the civil service are sometimes hard to get at. But these other folks, the people you're talking about, are are at higher levels, which...
They're at higher levels, and many serve at the pleasure of the president.
Yes.
And we have, again, norms broken for when the president can fire somebody.
Yeah. Right, true. And Biden hasn't been banned from Twitter. He can just fire him on Twitter, I guess.
Yeah.
Give that a shot.
He did in one case. He fired a really bad, two very bad Social Security commissioners. One of them he had to fire, and the other resigned. The other didn't put up a fight.
Okay.
So, he can do it, and he has done it. He needs to do it more. It really, particularly the Postal Service. I mean, come on.
Still waiting for that one. Yeah.
Come on, man.
Yeah, what's the deal? Right? I'm going to ask him. And he can tell us, too. But don't mail the answer. That's all I'm asking. Anyway.
It's like, save the Postal Service and everybody loves you. The Postal Service is everybody's favorite institution. Whether, it's because they love it or they love to complain about it.
True. It's on everybody's mind. It's certainly a visible part of...
But actually giving people something to complain about, the fact that it can take a month for a package to go across the country, that's stupid.
Yeah.
And easily fixed.
Well, I'm not certain what's driving the delay, but I was pleased to hear about his DeJoy's willingness to go along with the postal banking stuff, and somewhat redeeming in the sense of if we have to have him stick around for whatever reason.
Something that I don't know if this is true or not.
No?
He'd been there a couple months already last summer when they were talking about doing this, and there was a deal with Chase, I believe. They were in talks with Chase to put their ATMs into postal offices.
Okay.
And DeJoy had at least a $15,000 interest in stocks in Chase.
Okay.
A little of interest there.
A little bit. I mean, 15,000. I mean, as these guys go, probably not that much, but more than I've got in Chase or anything else. But
Chase and I think it was 13 other companies with which the Postal Service has business relationships. That's the latest.
Okay.
From Roy. He did after Congress started paying attention and hauled him up there a couple times for hearings. He did eventually report that he had this conflict, and he did put them in blind trust or divest or whatever. But it took him a few months.
Yeah. It is surprising how slowly they come to these realizations. And you're not supposed to do that, even if it is for the type of people we're talking about. Not that much money. It's still, you're going to do better. You'll have a little more money available to you if Chase gets that job, and therefore their stock price goes up.
Because of how reporting works, it's at least 15,000. It could go up to, I think it was 50.
That could be. Yeah, I don't know what the categories are.
How reporting ranges work.
Right.
So,
could be $5, could be $1 billion. I don't know. That's the
when he was obviously in this job in the first place because he was a big Trump donor.
Yeah. Right.
Because he needed money to the RNC, to the actual convention, because he was doing everything in his power to be a crony. Yes.
Please make me a crony. And all you have to do is give money, and he had it, and money is very important to these guys, and so it's difficult to believe that they're ignoring an opportunity to steal more, even if it's, small potatoes for them, giant potatoes for me.
Yeah, I really don't think that it was helping out working people who can't afford to have bank accounts that DeJoy had in mind when he was working on this project.
Yeah, well, possibly not. But it would be nice, and it would be helpful. My first thought was does he have an interest in the people who get the contract to provide the cards or something? Is that what it is? I would look there next, I suppose. But then we can subpoena him and see if he'll answer any of them. That still looms. All right. Well, not so bad, but we're still...
we got through a whole half hour with hardly even talking about infrastructure.
I know.
Millennium.
And yet, there it is. It's still working
there
on
it
it.
is.
We're having votes this week?
Still moving goalposts. That's where we're at. Manchin is moving goalposts again.
Well, okay. Yeah, that's his usual favorite. I was wondering about whether they were going to get to a vote of some kind, and I still see Pelosi appears to be holding firm on the linkage, so that's good. That resolve hasn't weakened any. I don't know whether it results in anything.
But that only gives them this week to have the vote, and I think what they're probably going to end up having to do is extend the Highway Trust Fund again. I don't see coming to an agreement this week, and I don't see yet the Congressional Progressive Caucus saying, yeah, sure, we'll pass the BIF without having this deal made.
Well, they have the template available to them. They just change the date and kick it on, and it's one of their favorite games.
And Biden's off to Glasgow at the end of the week with Manchin saying, no, you can't reduce methane emissions. There.
All right. Plenty more to work on then. I have a feeling maybe we'll get another opportunity to try to squeeze it into our segment next week.
I think probably so.
Okay, good call. All right, thanks, Joan. Speaking of good call, we'll speak to you again on this call next week.
Radio.com.
Absolutely.
Take care.
You have been listening to Kagro in the Morning with David Waldman.
All right, another good call would be for you to stay tuned here on Netroots Radio for Justice Putnam and the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy coming up next right after this program. What's on tap? Well, I can squeeze in one thing. Let's see. The role of Facebook and the extremism it spread for profit on the January 6th insurrection is under scrutiny. More about that next.